Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on The Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to The Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.
"20 seconds a week to lose 20% of your weight in a year with diet and exercise." That's the power of GLP-1s through Ro. Ro helps find the medication that's right for you, based on cost, availability, and your weight loss goals. Losing weight with GLP-1s is possible through Ro.
Hey, GLP-1 Plus Sides community. Before we jump into the podcast, please take the time to leave us a 5-star review on whatever audio platform you're listening to the podcast on. Share your story and how the podcast has helped you. This will help us get referred up in the audio platform so that we can reach more people that need our help, our support, and guidance from our doctors. Help us get loud and change things. Welcome to the Plus Sides Podcast. As you can see, if you're watching, which you should be, I know, I get it. Audio's all the things, but you're missing our faces. Go to YouTube. And, I have to ask you, because Sabrina will come at me if I don't. Please, if you're listening on the audio platforms, give us a 5-star review. That helps us go up in the charts, which helps us be referred and ranked so that other people who have the disease of obesity and other diseases and disorders, right, and don't know about GLP-1s, and they think that it's their fault and they think that they're alone, they will hear about us and they will come here and they will learn from the doctors and from all of us, and they will get better. So we need you to give us a 5-star review. Okay, go do it now. Yay! Now,
and I got to interrupt you for just 1 second because I follow the podcast charts for health and medicine in the United States very closely to see how our podcast on the pen, the weekly dose, is doing. And I got to say, you know what happened this week? The Plus Sides podcast cracked the top 20 in the United States. 19th this week.
Yes. Can you feel?
I mean, I'm talking about asking your followers to do the advocacy work, because that's what it really is. Every time you give the podcast a 5-star rating and review, every time you give the YouTube video a thumbs up, you're advocating. Because like Kim said, there are people that still think that it's their fault, that they are dealing with obesity, right? So it makes a difference. Let me show you, because I follow this pod charts very closely. I don't know if you can see this, probably not.
There it is.
But Plus Sides, number 19 in the United States of America in medicine this week. Let me tell you, that you are among some of the largest podcasts in the country when you are in those numbers. So that's amazing.
It's amazing. That is fabulous. I love it. 19. Damn. I remember when we were just in like 100. And now we're like, that's crazy. I remember one day, like, I got an email from somebody trying to sell me some shit, and he was like, "Congratulations on being in the top 2.5% of podcasts globally on Apple." And I'm like, where did you get that information?
Yeah. And why am I not making more money?
Exactly. Why am I not charging more advertisers?
Right?
So kudos. That's awesome.
Yay, thanks. Yeah, that's a big deal for us. Damn. Oh, I'm so excited. Sorry if Kitty's in the room. They shouldn't be, by the way. It's
I wish I could move a little more, but I'm on carpet.
That's what she
for
said.
what it's worth, On the Pen does really great in Bulgaria.
Oh yeah.
Bulgaria loves On the Pen. So
thank
you,
Bulgarians.
Thanks, Bulgaria.
I love that.
That's
amazing.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think we have. I remember seeing something in Ireland. We had some, but I think that was just because we had Dr. McCrotty on, and he's Irish, and so. But he was fantastic. That was such a good episode.
Yeah,
awesome. Anyway, hey guys.
Hey girls.
So okay, so I just want to do quick intros. So tonight we have Sabrina. JT's got to work, all that Delta stuff. I don't know when this is going to air, but
Lord.
that Delta stuff with the hack and all the things, she'd be a busy girl. So
I'm praying for you, JT.
Yeah. We're praying for you, JT. Hallelujah. GLP1 evangelist, praying for JT. Hallelujah. But yeah, so we have Sabrina tonight, and we have Kat tonight, and we also have Dave. I would like to do a round of intros so that you know, in case you're new here, which you might be since we fancy now, number 19 on the shots. Sabrina, who are you? What you do? What you doing?
I'm Sabrina Ramos. You can find me on TikTok at Brina_727. I have type 2 diabetes and obesity. I have been on Mounjaro for 13 months now and am down 76 pounds. And I love the gym. I am a gym enthusiast. Love working out.
I love it. Kat, who are you? What you doing? How you doing? Why are you here?
I'm Kat Carter 7, by the way, over there. I'm the TikTok. You can find me on the IGs as Mrs. Kat Carter. I probably should consolidate all my names, but you know, I didn't have consolidated names before I started doing this podcast. So
that's anyway. Right. Now you're number 19 on the charts.
Charts
hopping, baby. And I'm Kim Carlos. Yeah. And this is the Plus Size Podcast. And I've lost 105 pounds on GLP-1 medications. It's taken me 2 years. I have hit many, many stalls. I am not an example of like the people who are like crazy responders and all the things, but the amount of like work I've done, like mentally, and then I've been an advocate, and I do this podcast, and I do a lot on other socials to try to kind of spread, as Dave would say, the GLP-1 gospel. And it's not because we're like, you know, we're drug pushers. You're a drug pusher. Is that what you are, Katie? If you know, you know. You know, it's not like that. We just legitimately, it's changed our lives in many, many ways. Like some with weight, some with health, some with both. Like, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I think that people are said sort of like akin to penicillin, like, but for obese people, you know, and probably many other things too, because it helps with a lot of other things. So you talk about that here. What?
I think it might be a little bit like New Jack City over here for me, because I'm like Pookie. I gotta get my drugs from a special man down the street.
Definitely have the kids leave the room. And then we have our special guest tonight, which is Dave. Dave, who are you? What do you do? Why are you here?
I am trying to figure out whether I'm the one that's dinging like crazy with the iMessages. So
I think it's me.
Is it okay?
But I'm looking at I don't know what the deal is, because I'm looking at my phone and it's not it, but I hear it.
Yeah, I know it's not my phone, but
sorry.
Maybe it's my computer.
I'm team Android over here with no.
It always seems to go nuts when I'm busy on here. That's when everybody seems to start texting. But I am Dave Knapp. I have a website called onthepen.com and a podcast called On the Pen, the Weekly Dose, and of course a Thursday night show called On the Pen Live. On the Pen, it's all about all the things pen, right? Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, Zepbound, compound. That's what we talk about. And we talk a lot about the medications in terms of the news that goes on around these medications, because I am a news nerd. We also talk about a lot of the pipeline medications that are out there, because as many of us have found, we don't respond to the medication the same way. There's a definite spectrum of responders. And so some of us are really looking forward into the future for the medications that will better fit our needs metabolically, right? And so those are kind of the things that we talk about at On the Pen. I've been making content since I started a GLP-1. I started on Mounjaro for my type 2 diabetes. like Sabrina, back in 2022, in the fall of 2022. And that literally, when I picked up my box, was when I made my first video. And yeah, it's been quite a ride since then, for sure.
Awesome. And then for those people that don't know, Dave was on our show in the first season, and we are now, by the time Dave airs, in season 4.
Whoa.
That
It took me 3
real.
seasons to get back. Sheesh.
We've been busy, Dave, and that's what we're going to talk about. All the things that have happened, you know.
Very, very busy.
For those of you that don't know, so Dave came on the show then, and we just talked about his community story. I found his channel through a friend who was following him, and then she met me, and then we started the podcast, and then she was like, we should have Dave on our show, and I started following Dave, and Dave and I became good friends. Dave and I have been going through what it's like to be on this weird rocket ship. And I don't mean the medicine, I mean being advocates, and having shows about the medicines and the people that we've met and the lives that have been changed and the community that's been created. And Dave and I have been able to kind of go like through that together. And it's been such a blessing because nobody can understand this. Like it's, you know what I mean? And Dave can, and Dave has a family, as do I, and it gets complicated. And in the middle of all this, when I think he and I were both just like, let's do a thing and try to help some people, it kind of exploded, you know? And we've had ups and downs and all of those different things in between. But it's been, I feel like I've lived more in this past year and a half than I think I've lived in the past 15 years. Like so much has happened, so many emotions, so much change, good and bad, like roller coaster of all the things. And it's just been incredible and kind of a really big blessing, and a curse. We could talk more about that too. But I would love to know, like we talked, you can give us like sort of like just a little bit of your story. Cause like, I think it's good. We can probably find some clips too of the episode that you were on in the beginning. But maybe just give us like a little bit of a background of what your journey has been like. And then kind of what's been going on with the show and your advocacy efforts.
Yeah, and I will just echo what Kim said. It's been a weird roller coaster. When I was being interviewed the night, my first time on the show, of course, I believe Janine was the conduit at the time. And so I was just kind of learning what you all were doing over on TikTok because I was on YouTube. So like I had no idea there was this great big world of TikTok that was talking about all this stuff. And the night that I came on to interview was the night that the plus size gals found out that Rosie was going to do the podcast. And so that was a really cool moment to be a part of because like I'm sitting here kind of in the background waiting to do this interview with these people I don't really know all that well. And it's like, we got Rosie. And like every bit of crazy as you can imagine. I'm thinking, Rosie O'Donnell? That is amazing. So it's been cool to sort of be along for that part of your journey as well. And I will just echo what Kim said. It's just been a wild ride to this point where now all of a sudden, you know, I don't want to say that I speak for the community because I definitely like this community can speak for themselves. But in some ways, when you're thrust into like, you know, media interviews and you know, on news programs, you do find yourself sort of weighing and measuring what you say against the collective experience that we hear about every single day. Because unlike medical professionals who I think of, especially in terms of PCPs who may be prescribing a GLP-1 here and there and have maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 patients on the medication, we're literally hearing from thousands daily. And so we really do have this sort of unique perspective about what is going on, what the challenges are, and what reality is like for people on these medications. So it's just sort of this weird thing. And like Kim said, I was diagnosed with diabetes in 2021, did a full year of really strict keto because that's what you do when you get diagnosed with diabetes, even though the preceding 20 years of my adult life was a keto yo-yo. It was literally, I would describe my life from about 17 years old to 36 when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes as a keto roller coaster. And when keto did not accomplish for me what my doctor wanted it to, there was like surgery. You're going to have surgery. That's your next step. And it wasn't that I was opposed to it, but I definitely have evolved on the idea and the concept of who the right candidate is. But in my mind, the right candidate for bariatric surgery was somebody on my 600-pound life. And so I thought, well, that seems extreme. It seems, all these things go through your head. And he's like, look into it. So I didn't have insurance coverage, but he's like, well, since you don't have insurance coverage, there's these medications. And they're accomplishing hormonally what bariatric surgery is doing, but they're expensive. But since you're diabetic, you can probably get it. And so that was my introduction to Mounjaro. Of course, when I came online, especially again, I was just on YouTube at the time. And I mean that as a user. I was not creating content at the time. And I found a lot of really exciting stories. Like I lost 100 pounds on Ozempic. I lost 100 pounds. And Mounjaro was still pretty new, but people were losing a tremendous amount of weight already on tirzepatide. Even though it was only out as Mounjaro, the diabetes version, many people were taking it off label. We know that. And we're seeing just such tremendous success. And so I was like, there's a lot of great stories like that. And I hope that's how it shakes out for me. But I am interested in the science. I was very skeptical. In fact, one of the first things I said to my doctor when I was diagnosed with diabetes, he said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I don't want to take medicine. And he goes, well, you have to eat keto. And so it was just an interesting evolution. And so I didn't want medicine to start with. And so I started to learn everything I could about tirzepatide and semaglutide and incretin hormones and all these things. And as I was learning, I was like, nobody's sharing about this part of it. Certainly somebody might want to hear about it. And so that was sort of the evolution of my content, is I just really started to share the things that I was learning about these medications in the hopes that somebody else would come along who wanted that information also, and it would be easier for them to find and ultimately make a decision that I think for the vast majority of people who take these medications will change their lives for the better, even if you're not a super responder like me. Not that I am a super responder, but even if you're like me and not a super responder, they're just doing wonders in other ways, and like Kat as well. So that was sort of the quick Cliff's Notes version of what got me to GLP-1 medications and then ultimately to content creation. Of course, I always tell people, they're like, well, how'd you get all these followers? And the reality is I sort of caught lightning in a bottle with this thing right here. This was the OG Mounjaro savings card. And there was all sorts of changes to this thing. It made it very complicated for people who tried to be on these medications. And ultimately what happened is I just started really following the changes, making videos about the card and helping people navigate that process. And so that really was a catalyst for some real growth on the YouTube channel. And then from there, a lot of the content became about navigating insurance, your PBMs, prior authorizations, all that stuff. And it's like we're in this weird cycle where it's like all of it is needed again. So a lot of the content that I made when I first came onto YouTube is getting a lot of clicks because there's so many more people coming into the GLP-1 space. And we could talk a little bit about some of the other things that have happened. There have been a lot of exciting things that have happened, but all of it has sort of led to having this voice within the community that I don't know that I ever set out to have. But now that I have it, it's sort of like, how do I steward this well? And how do I use my platform to help people in a way that I can leverage the gifts and talents and abilities that God has given me? And so that's really what On the Pen has been all about.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, Sabrina was a fan of On the Pen too. Sabrina, I don't know if you learned about the podcast from On the Pen, but somehow you ended up coming and now helping with the podcast. How did you come about that, Sabrina?
So I actually found Dave from your podcast, from the Plus Side podcast.
Oh,
so, yeah,
that's cool.
So when I first heard Dave's, because it was season 1, and so when I first heard Dave's episode, I was like, love him. So then I started following him on YouTube, and I consumed his content. I am a huge, huge, huge fan of his.
That's awesome. Dave, you were saying a few things like that really resonated with me, particularly that savings card. So when I started the medicine, I wasn't sharing, but I was following. And I didn't start creating until I switched to Ozempic. So when I was on Ozempic, because that was what my insurance would pay for, that was December 2022. And I decided it was November. Yeah, something like that. Maybe October. I don't know. 2022. And I had lost maybe 18 pounds at that point because I had started on Victoza. And and then all the shortages and all the things, then my insurance was like, we'll pay for Ozempic. And I was like, okay. So started taking that. And then I was like, well, other people are on Ozempic, and I found the Mounjaro community. And I had been following them when I was on Victoza. So I was like, okay, I think I'll start creating content. But I was actually just kind of talking about the mental and the emotional changes. I wasn't doing like a lot of people in the community kind of started with like weigh-in days and like shot days and things like that. But I felt like I also had something a little bit different to contribute because I also was not losing very fast. And I wouldn't have weeks where I would lose 1 and 2 pounds. And everybody that was creating very much seemed like the sort of standard, right? Like they're losing 1 and 2 pounds a week. And I would go some weeks where I'll be up 3 pounds and then I'll lose 6 pounds the next week. And it was just like, that was my body. And I was like, I don't want to be on the scale all the time. I don't want to talk about my starting weight. And so then one day the savings card changed from Mounjaro people because the Mounjaro community was very accepting for all of us that were not on it. We kind of just became the GLP1 community. It was slow, but it was like #Mounjaro journey was like the thing, And so then I remember that like, I was like, I made this one video and it was the video I got the most like interest in ever. And I was just like, I work in product marketing for like security startups and it's my expertise. I'm a go-to-market strategist, right? And I was like, and I'm seeing some correlation with the savings card and the shortage and all this thing and kind of the strategy behind it. And I was like, and here's my opinion if you care. Like, I was like, I don't know anything about any of this, but I'm just noticing these like correlations. That video blew up. Now, but not blew up like my stuff blows up now, but blew up like back then, right? That was when I became any kind of voice at all. And all I was doing was speculating. You know what I mean? That was it. And I much like you feel like, I didn't really mean to be in this position, but there's a certain, you have to honor it, right? Because like I've always said from the beginning, and I'm very open about on the show, that like, I'm just walking the path, right? This isn't like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm just walking the path and just trying to do the right things. And it's hard to know the right decisions to make. And it's very intense. Like, I think people think that when you have this podcast that you just kind of show up and record and you just post it up. No, it's a tremendous amount of work and therefore time away from your family, and I know Dave and I both have, he has kids and I have one kid. And I think it's been a struggle, Dave. And I, again, I'm so thankful for our friendship, for us being able to like share that, because you always give me insight that helps me make different choices. Right. And it's nice not to feel alone, so I'm really thankful for all of that, but it's interesting, the path that's been laid out for sure, and then I think, since all of the stuff with the savings card, it's like they made all these changes and they just keep, like you said, they just keep making them again. Right. Like, and now we've got another savings card and they changed it even more. And then we've also had zepbound launch and all these different things. Right. And it's only,
yes, it keeps on giving from a content standpoint.
So true.
If you're living it, it's not quite the gift that.
No, it's not. It's brutal. The shortage. I just got a call right before the episode and they were like, we have your 12.5. I'm like, whoa, huzzah. That's great news.
It's like the lottery.
Yeah, I know. I remember back in the day when I used to be able to get 3 months at a time from mail order. Those days are dead now.
Oh yeah.
Those days are over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so tell us a little bit about, since you've been on the show, like some things that have happened with you and becoming a content. Obviously, you've gotten on TikTok, and like how many followers are you at there now? Because you had nothing when you were on before, and we got Rosie.
Yeah, that was an interesting journey out. before I get to that, one of the things that I want to just build on what you're saying about sort of being thrust into this position and not really, asking for it, but just like finding yourself there. Kind of one of the coolest things I think about being a content creator and having sort of the unique platforms that you and I do, both where we both kind of have a show, we both are able to help people tell their journeys. I think people finding their voices, like new content creators coming along and going, if they're doing that, I can do that too. And I think of like the thing that Sabrina has going. I never know which way to point. The thing that Sabrina has going over on TikTok with her Friday nights, that she has all that panel and just all sorts of people giving their voice. Like just a cool thing to have been like accidentally like sort of a trailblazer in creating content within this community, because they're like we were talking on before we came live, there's so many now. And now it's almost like there's so many that I would love to have on my show, but then you're like, the way you do it is better. Like you usually have like a community voice on every show and then an expert on it. And that's a really good format for me. It's hard enough for me to get like one guest locked down for the week, right? I think just before the show, I was like, Kim, can you do Thursday? The person I was going to have on Thursday. And we were trying to figure it out. You're like, yeah, no problem. But, like there's too many to even have on the show now. So now it's like, okay, I gotta like who's out there. And so anyway, that's a cool part of this journey. So I did go to TikTok shortly after or around the time that I came on the Plus. I think it was around the time because when I went over there, Kim's like, hey, here's Dave. He does really cool stuff. And I'd come into your lives and you follow Dave, blah, blah, blah. And we got to 1,000 really quick. I think right now it's somewhere around 33,000 followers on TikTok. Which even now, like, it sounds like a real. What's that, Kat?
I think that's amazing.
It's crazy to think about the numbers. Like even I remember even hitting 5,000, and 5,000 is a huge number. Like you think about like a room full of 5,000 people. Like that's a ton of people. And so, I mean, that's really the amazing thing about TikTok is you go on there and your voice there's so many people there. Your voice, your story, what you had to say is going to resonate with a lot of people. And that's really the beauty of TikTok is just the volume of people there. Like you can go there, and if you have the guts and the audacity to share your story, it's going to resonate, and that's going to be good for you, and it's going to be good for other people. And Sabrina, I think you've really tapped into that with the lives that you do. So yeah, and I think like more than maybe the numbers on TikTok, I think what's been most amazing is the opportunities that it's opened for On the Pen because of the mass amounts of people. I think the connections with Madison over at Bloomberg, like when I was really pushing my content on Eli Lilly to release single dose vials, which they still need to do, Eli Lilly, it's absolutely shameful. It's absolutely shameful that there's a pressure release valve and you're not using it. But, to find members of the media who I wouldn't have found other than through TikTok, or wouldn't have found me than other through TikTok, members of the media that are willing to amplify that voice. And now there are millions and millions of people who have heard the calls to Eli Lilly. There's been, hundreds of articles shared about the shortages that like just finished up an interview with Fortune magazine last week that'll be coming out. I'm super excited about that one because this is a huge deal. And so now all of a sudden you find yourself thrust into this, I don't want to say spotlight because it's very niche to our community, right? But an opportunity to amplify the message from the community that's like, hey, like I had to call 50 pharmacies to find my medication, but I finally found it. Or you hear these crazy stories like I drove 350 miles both ways in a snowstorm to get my medicine. And like, these are real people. And it's like so easy to lose sight of that when there's just these, like, you can get hundreds or thousands of comments on a video. And it's like very easy to lose track of the fact that these are real people with real lives going through real stuff. And so being able to like sort of carry that message of advocacy, and I think your form of advocacy and my form of advocacy look very different sometimes, but like both are needed. And so to be able to carry that message to the media, I think has been like one of the most exciting and unexpected parts of this journey for me personally, and something that I really, really effort to steward and take care of well, because it's a big deal.
It's so true. I mean, like I'll tell you candidly, like I assume that because basically every piece of content that I've made for this podcast, I talk about how the media has got it wrong, that the media never wants to talk to me. Like Madison and
Right.
Bloomberg was the exception that she did. And then out of nowhere, and I'm just going to talk about it now because I can, out of nowhere, I got a call from CNN that wanted me to come on the Anderson Cooper Real Story to talk about the podcast and what we're doing with the podcast. And then basically, like, I was like, oh my God, like they're not, because I honestly, I do think too, a lot of times, at least with the females in the media, frankly, the ones that get interviewed and talk about anything, it's the most dramatic because that's what they want for the most part, the media, right? The most sensationalized. They want someone who was looked at be very stereotypically fat and now is very stereotypically skinny. And those are the ones that they usually interview. I don't look like that. That's not my journey. That's not my life. That's not my body, you know? And so often I don't think people want to talk about the work that we do here because it's very positive, right? And it's a shame, but I thought, oh, this would be the opportunity. But even then, they still came back to me a month or so later and were like, we're going a different direction. And I was like, what? I mean, they did a phone interview with me and everything. And I thought, this will be it. And this will be the thing that blows the podcast up, right? People knowing about what we're doing. And it didn't happen. And it's just sort of like, so I haven't had that opportunity. And truthfully, I feel the same way. I've always felt the media, they're getting it wrong. I feel like Madison's the only one that's gotten it right, you know? And it's frustrating. And I told Madison when I met her, I was like, I no offense, but you guys have been getting it wrong a really long time. Like, get it together. But she does a wonderful job, you know? Yeah. But she's also coming in much later, right? Where there's more knowledge and more things and more creators. And she was very honest when I talked to her. She was like, legitimately, the people and the community in TikTok, they are driving the conversation. Mm-hmm. Like we are in the driver's seat, right? And that's because of all the people that show up and share their voices, you know? And I have said from the beginning, more voices equals good. And I know there have been times where people have said things like, oh, but that's competition for the podcast. No, because my goal for the podcast is to help people. So why would I ever be concerned that there are more people talking about what I want to change? Because it's going to take everyone. I remember like several quarters ago, there was an Eli Lilly savings call and I tuned in. The Q&A is always the best. And at the end, he said, how are you going to get on formularies, basically, to the guy, right? And the guy said, it's going to take the voices of the people with obesity, because it is, right? We have to fight the insurance companies. We have to make content. We have to get loud so we can change things, and it's in our hands. And so basically what I do on the podcast, because this is how I kind of got around it, I just try to find celebrities and public figures to come on, because those are usually big names that help, like with Rosie, for example, that help kind of push these things through. I mean, I'm telling you, Bravo is like my new favorite thing, like getting people on from Bravo. Like, let's do this, because it gives the juice to the podcast so that people hear about it and learn about it. It was I really hope, Dave, that you'll be able to go to a meetup soon, because it was very hard. I say hard, but when I would talk to people and they were so moved and telling me how I've changed their life, like those are the words, right? And like, I certainly don't feel worthy of that at all. I just feel like I kind of bring people together and we talk about things. You know what I'm saying? Like I do the same thing that I feel like a lot of people do. You know, I just happen to have a marketing background, so I just do it a little different, you know? But I think that it is very sobering to hear people say that, you know? And it was nice to have John there as my husband, and have people say that to him, and him to hear people say that to me, because it's been quite the sacrifice for him, you know, and quite the sacrifice for my son. Because I work a full-time job and I can't do it all. I just can't. And I try to do things with TikTok Shop. And when people give me a hard time about that, I'm like, you have no idea. Like, you know, and I think that it's people don't realize that giving a voice to the community it's very important. And I don't know if it will ever end. I hope years from now we'll look back and go, we did the thing and the thing happened and now there's access for all, right? I don't know though, because I feel like it took a really long time for that to happen with gastric bypass. You know what I mean? I feel like that was 10 years, 20 years, like at least. And there was no social media then. So I don't know, maybe we can kind of move things forward a little bit more. But it's interesting what you said about speak for the community and have these different perspectives. You know, I remember when I met Sina for the first time. So for those of you who don't know, because I'm a go-to-market strategist, I was a strategist for Fridays when they launched their telehealth and help bring them in the community and help them with messaging and positioning and telling them what we needed, right, as a community. So I think for me, like something that's been rewarding, if not being able to be sort of influence the media or the voice that way, being able to be a part in a couple opportunities recently, where I've been able to help shape how our people will be treated in healthcare, just with the perspective that I have, has been probably my favorite thing.
Food has definitely been a very dominant voice in my head. That's not the main focus anymore. Dieting, exercising, and adding GLP-1s through Row is a game changer. I have such a sense of mental freedom since I started with Row. Food no longer controls my thoughts. Family time used to revolve around food, and now it revolves around what we're gonna go do together.
I'm Dave Knapp, man on the Mounjaro. That's why I'm here. Big news for Semaglutide. I'm the most elusive of all the doses. So I have a couple theories and I'm interested to hear yours. The first, who likes my Karnak hat? Jokes about tirzepatide. You are on the pen.
You know, just being able to say, this is what we need, right? Quit trying to solve for problems we don't have, right? Like, and for Sina, for example, when I met him, I said, are you going to have mental health services? And he was like, I don't know, I hope so. And now he does, you know? And like connecting him with people in the community. Now Dr. Joy is with him and Sherry is with him. He's got movement coaches and all these different things. And it's not because I did anything special. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just because I was put in a position where I could have the conversation, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I remember when I met him, I said, this is going to sound really cheesy. And I don't know how else to say it, but I'm like the Lorax, I speak for the trees. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it's like, right? And like you said, they can speak for themselves. But the truth is, though, Dave, is they can't always speak for themselves. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you think about the amount of creators that are on TikTok that are in GLP, it's maybe a few hundred, right? There are not tens of thousands. There are not. And I think a lot of that has to do with, you know, the stigma and the stuff that, you know, and shame and judgment and bias and all the things that we deal with as people living in bigger bodies with obesity in this country, you know?
In addition to fearing to being banned by TikTok.
In addition to that, yeah. Not to mention, right, like all the discrimination that we get on apps where they don't even like us to hashtag the name of the medicine. Like, we are not doing that. Like, we are, you know, it's like, they're just things like that. It's been, but I think that's for me, like, that's something that's been really cool. And I didn't realize it until you described what's it meant to you, you know? So you do your thing, I'll do my thing, and we'll advocate in between. That's how we'll work it out.
Absolutely.
Well, Sabrina's Friday Night Live. So for people that don't know, if you're not on TikTok, you need to, and you need to follow Sabrina. Sabrina, why don't you tell us a little bit about how it got started, you know, and, you know, sure, what you do there and maybe what's come from it. Like, who's come to you and said, I say Sabrina things now, you know?
Yeah. So I host a GLP-1 panel every Friday night at 7 p.m. Central on TikTok, and we have guests from the community come up. I believe that people who have existed in a larger body, you know, like people who are obese, or we have a lot of trauma. We're carrying around a lot of stuff, you know, and just from friends or family or just existing in a larger body. And I feel like we should have a safe space where we can connect and share and just kind of unload some of that. And that's kind of what we do. We just kind of talk about our journeys. And it's very powerful. It's therapeutic and healing. And at least I get 5 messages after every single live, and people are like, "Thank you so much for creating a safe space." So it's
I love
it's
it.
really become a very big part of who I am. I absolutely love it.
It's weird how this becomes part of who you are, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah,
Yeah.
like you can't imagine a life without it. But it's also, I don't think people understand the weight. I don't think they understand. Not the weight in a negative way, but ultimately you cannot spend this much time creating the content, not just creating it, but the emotional like gravity, right? Of talking about chronic diseases and pain and shame and trauma as much as we do, because we're trying to shed light on it. And that amount of emotional turmoil, it's a lot, And again, like, no one's complaining, right? Like, I don't think any of us are,
Right.
but ultimately, as we grow, we have to make different choices about where we put our time, right?
It is heavy. It's
I
heavy.
it is heavy. I mean, ultimately it is time away from your family. It is time away from other things you used to do, and we're not going to stop, and like Dave and I were talking recently, because I call him a lot when I'm like, and, and he said, I understand where you are, and listened. And then he was like, ultimately, Kim, like the podcast and what you do is the work of your life. You're not going to walk away from it. And I'm not, right? Like, it's true, right? Everything else will, other than my family, right, will go, and I'll have to continue to make those choices as the podcast gets bigger and as my following or whatever gets bigger, and it's a lot because I don't know what to do. I probably should sit with some prayer for a while, to be honest.
Yeah, I think one of the things that when we were talking, when we look back on our life in 10, 15, 20 years, I think we will find this part of our life to be a part of our life where we found a great deal of meaning and purpose, because I feel, and not to get too cheesy or preachy about it, but like in some ways it feels like a calling. You have a certain gift set, and you and I have a very similar background, not completely apples to apples, but marketing, sales, and to be able to leverage those talents and gifts to be able to sort of build community around a topic that is extremely loaded with so much baggage and emotion. And like you said, that can be draining. I think where the journey gets really personal to me is, and you touched on it, is the personal sacrifices that you make to do it. I was just telling somebody, like, one of the things that I'm pretty in tune with, my strengths and weaknesses as a person. One of my weaknesses as a person is that I have really, in many areas of my life, lacked discipline, like a commitment to do the hard thing, right? I feel like I put a great deal of effort and energy into making life easier. And that is definitely like something that I would say is a personality flaw of mine. But one thing that I've been extremely dedicated to and extremely committed to is my Thursday night show. We've done 73 episodes now of that, which is just about as many weeks as I've been doing this. I started it maybe 2 months into my journey into content creation, but every single week. And like that, like you were talking about having John at the meetup and getting emotional about the sacrifice that John has made, and that, it's been to your son as well, to not have mommy always there, or even, and sometimes it's not even there because you're filming, but you're mentally there, or you're trying to think about the next move. And my family, same way, right? So when you think about like this personal sacrifices that you have made to build the community, I think that is where you go, this is not something that I can ever walk away from. And just a little bit about my own, like in the last year, I've switched from a job that I was at for 10 years that I was very, very good at, and made it a really good living for a guy who didn't go to college, and a guy who didn't have MD after his name, only per endocrinologist now. but no MD, no lawyer title, no fancy lawyer title. I was making good money too, but I've walked away from that. I've actually switched my job twice in the last year to better accommodate this. Not only this, right? That just makes it sound like, wow, it's just all in on this thing. To better accommodate this so that I can be not just better at this, because I'm very happy with where we're at On the Pen, but to be a better dad and a better husband in the process. Because for me, that's where I was, and we talked about this a little bit, Kim, but that's where I was sort of getting it all wrong. Like, I wasn't taking care of my own health the way that I could be. I wasn't taking care of my family the way that I could be. And something had to change, right? And so initially that was the first job. And then when that job started to be a sitting in a car all day, every day, I knew for myself to be here for my family, it had to change again. And so like, I think that's the part of like, if there was a part of like content creation in this space that I would, just, try to help people wrap their head around when they watch a video, a lot of times you get like, hey, the audio was a little bit off, or you should do this with your lighting, or you should do that. And like, that's all constructive and can be helpful. But, it just goes to show you that like what you don't know about the content that I put out is this 86 things that I was doing before it so that I could just have a little bit of space to do this, And so I think when you think about like doing this, like there's a great deal of personal sacrifice that goes into it. And so I think that's why it does get so deeply personal when we talk about this. And it's a weird topic to talk about, honestly, because some people will understand and some people will be like, well, this is just creators talking and whatever. But it is a deeply personal journey to have been sort of building up our respective communities.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that even the smallest creator for sure has experienced it, right? And when I say smallest, I am only talking about followings, right? And that's it. Like every creator, every voice matters. Every voice matters. Right. And there are plenty of creators that have very small followings that have been in articles in the media and all of that. Like it doesn't have to be, it's not like large creator palooza. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's plenty of opportunity for anyone to come to TikTok or anyone to go to IG, especially IG right now, and just make the content. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like it's and just share. Like there's so much power in it, for yourself emotionally, and what the journey is like, and for the connection with the community. I will say, like, and we haven't really talked a lot about it on the podcast, but, TikTok changed their guidelines and you and I were pretty heavily suppressed right before they changed them. I feel like it led up for you. And I got so shook by it because like I was getting like 0 views and getting locked in jail. And I was like, I can't lose the account. It's how I do shop, which at the time before I had advertisers was helping fund the podcast, how I justify the time away from my family. It's how I, all of these different things. I couldn't lose that. And TikTok said that, we couldn't talk about weight loss meds anymore. None of us are fucking talking about weight loss meds. Well, maybe some people are, but we're not, and we tried, right? We tried to communicate with them. We tried to get in the media. We tried to do everything we could, but ultimately their answer back to us was never anything other than to quote the fucking guidelines. Right. And the problem is like, I stopped sharing. Right. So being me, I went and made another account and I started going live on that account, and that account is 6,000, 7,000 something at this point, and that was in like what, June or something? Wait, May. Yeah. So, and that's where we're all, and all it is because I got to 1,000 with people following me that I'm close to. And then I started going live and our lives exploded. And I swear the reason that the lives are so huge right now is because they won't let us make fucking content, right? Because we have to change how we say things. We can't hashtag the names of the medicines anymore. We can't hashtag, I mean, some people can hashtag the compound version. Some people get away with it. I can't get away with it. I can't hashtag anything like that. I can hashtag type 2 diabetes, PCOS. I can hashtag obesity as a disease. And that's about it. And that's it. Those are the things that I can actually like get away with doing. And that's all I put on my content, because if I do anything else, it's hard because you can't, like Dave and I know, because we're marketing, like you need to make it searchable or else it doesn't do anybody any good. But now the lives, they just throw you right up in there. So it's weird. It's like they care more about that. But the other day, personally, I got very upset. I had a very bad experience with a gyno when I went to get a yearly, and he talked to me about my weight. It was a very bad experience. And I went to go make content about it, which is what I would normally do on this journey from the very beginning, which is I bled on this app, right? Before it became a thing and before I had like a brand and all this other stuff, right? I bled on this app. I let it all out. There was no filter. And I've always said the hard things, and I will always say the hard things, but I felt like over the past couple of months, I haven't been able to. So I haven't been able to honor, like we talked about, Dave, in the beginning, why 57,000 people chose to follow me, right? I haven't been able to honor that because I couldn't make the content there, and they for sure weren't over there. All those people over there that's on my other account, those are new people. I met them in lives. They're brand new people, right? And then all the other people that are over that chose when we were in the thick of it to support me and to follow me and all those different things, I've been disconnected because I haven't been able to say it there. And I felt very like stifled and all of that. But my point being, when I went to go make that content, I forgot to toggle to my backup account. And I made it on my main account, and I said everything. All the words we're not supposed to say, and it went viral. And I was so terrified, but excited. And I'll tell you the reason it is because all the people that I have not seen communicate on any of my posts in the past, 2 or 3 months or whatever it's been now, 3 months, right? All of a sudden swarmed. And they haven't seen me in forever. They haven't seen any of my content in forever. And I felt supported by my community again. And I think a lot of times people think that when you're a creator, when you've been on the journey a long time, or if you go to maintenance or whatever it is, that you've got to figure it out. No, I don't have it figured out. I don't have it figured out, like, at all. And it was so nice to feel, because I have been struggling with the mental health of not having that. I think that we forget too, it's not just about the bigger picture and the voice and all of the things that we're trying to do. It's also about the journey, right? It's also about Sabrina's lives, right? Where we're talking about the mental piece of it, right? And there's so much work to be done there. And many people, I think, don't do it. And I think a lot of the reason that is because there's a really bad issue, right, with mental health support and having enough providers and having, affordable care and stuff for mental health support on this. And I also think it's a weird ass journey. Like, there's not a lot of, that's what's great about Dr. Joy is she has obesity. So she kind of understands all of the unwinding that she had to do. And so she's able to kind of unwind it with us, which is great that she's with Fridays. But I think I'm like run off of the mouth now. But my point being, I think that the journey is important for like the bigger picture, but the fact of being connected with the community, that is like one of the tools, right, in the toolkit with the medicine, right, is being able to feel like you were side by side with people every day and you're making content, and the connection and the amount of people coming in and going, oh, I felt like that. Oh, I felt like that. Oh, that's special, because so much of obesity is being alone, and being outcasted and all of those different things. So it's weird the way it's all happened. I can't, and lately I just kept making content. I'm still doing it. Like I'm making GOP content, and until I get caught, like, I don't know, like, because I really think they really pegged my ass early, Dave, because I was DMF Chemo and Mounjaro zepbound. So I was like all the SEO stuff, like if you search Mounjaro zepbound on TikTok, I was going to come up, and I think that just when the algorithm shifted, I was just caught right up in that web, but somehow something released and I've been able to make content again.
I feel like there's something that within a niche in a certain hashtag grouping, I feel like there's something algorithmically over there that is cyclical. I definitely experience it. And it seems to go in spurts of like 2 months. I'll have 2 months of just and it doesn't matter because I follow very closely. When I create content over there, I am very much creating content to sort of increase the engagement that TikTok seems to reward. And that would be the duration that somebody views a video. We're getting into the nerdery of content creation now, but the duration that somebody views a video and the percentage of people that view it to the end. And of course, the longer your video is, the harder it is to get that percentage of people that watch it to the end, because people on TikTok have a very short attention span. on the app at least. And so it doesn't, like, some of my best videos that I've done over the course of the last 6 months have been, you know, super, super, super high engagement, super high percentage of watch. But, you know, if they hit during the wrong time, they don't go anywhere. And that's what frustrates me about that, as I can't quite crack the code over there as to what's going to work and what's not, because nothing has really ever been the same since they started really cracking down on my account personally. When I started going into quarantines, because I went for the better part of a year without any of that. I came to TikTok during the great banana of this time last year, and I was completely unaffected by it. I think it's because I was new and I didn't have a whole book of content to sort of have the algorithm pick me up. But yeah, once it started hitting me, it feels like it's kind of never been the same. But again, I think the beauty of TikTok is that there's so many people there. And when you talked earlier about, you know, certain people in the community needing that voice, I would definitely agree. But I think that part of the beauty of what has happened, especially over on TikTok, and now you're seeing it on YouTube as well, is that people are finding their voice. More and more people are finding their way through trauma. And I think that's really one of the things that the Plus Sides has done really uniquely well, is to create an environment. And you all have, like, Kat, Sabrina, TJ, Kim, you all have your own unique way of doing it, but you all have a vibe about you that people feel like they can come and they can just, like, let it out. And I think that's really unique to this community specifically. And I think what sort of the magic is behind the Plus Sides is that people can come here and just feel safe to, like, let out their trauma. And I know even myself as a dude, like, I bet your demographics don't have a ton of dudes. Mine don't either. But, you know, even some of the things that you've said here, I was like, Kim, it wasn't until you said it's not your fault, and I really started thinking about how that worked with all the science, and that I really understood. That's the way I've been felt to believe my whole life, is that the issues that I'm dealing with are my fault. And now I know the science, right? But I still wrestle with the self-talk of, why'd you just do that? Why'd you just eat that? And then the reality is, it's just such, you said earlier, unwiring. There's just so much unwiring that has to happen because of the way that we've been programmed, whether it's from diet culture. And I've always loved the way that you talk about diet culture. You were the first person that I really heard talk about diet culture in the way that you do, and just how toxic it really is. And, you know, not to plug my own stuff, but I'm gonna, because it's what I'm living right now. So about a month and a half ago, I started writing a book, and now that I've changed jobs, I've had more time to focus on it. And I saw a video where you're making one as well, and you're kind of going through your own story. And that has been, like, what this last month has been to me, to go through and just to write my story down on paper. There's a quote that, like, how do I know what I think until I write? And that's definitely how I am. And I'm putting these words on paper, and then I'm going back and I'm proofing them, and I'm rewriting and going back. And then as I read it all and see it come together and read my own story, I go, it's no wonder that I think the way that I do. It's no wonder I had to unwire all that. I was programmed from a young age to believe that my avoidance of carbohydrates was going to make me socially, physically appealing to the outside world. And when that broke in 2021, and I was given a diabetes diagnosis, I didn't know what to do. And now that I'm 2 years into this journey, and I still haven't cracked the code on what it's going to take for me to get healed, at least I can look back and go, I've found friends, I've found community, and I've found other people who understand that this disease is a spectrum, and there's no easy answers for anybody. And again, like I said earlier, that's why I get so excited for the future of obesity medicine.
"20 seconds a week to lose 20% of your weight in a year with diet and exercise. That's the power of GLP-1s through Ro. Ro helps find the medication that's right for you, based on cost, availability, and your weight loss goals. Losing weight with GLP-1s is possible through Ro.
I'm Dave Knapp, man on the Mounjaro. That's why I'm here. Big news for Semaglutide. I'm the most elusive of all the doses. So I have a couple theories, and I'm interested to hear yours. The first, who likes my Karnak hat? Jokes about tirzepatide. You are on the pen.
Hey, Plus Siders. We're so glad that you were able to tune in for part 1 of the episode. Part 2 will be posted next week. We look forward to seeing you then. Have a great week. And remember, you're not alone. It's not true.